we can live our lives to please and honor and glorify God. We can do so. And still have unsaved friends and acquaintances. In fact, I would submit to you that's what Christ did. He was a friend of sinners. But he also didn't participate in their sin. It's a tightrope line to walk. The safe thing is to take the route that some say that take the route of never interacting with lost people. But yet that's never worked. Why? Because we're still going to fall to sin. Even if you were not around anybody, you would still fall in sin because you have a sin nature, because you have a sin mind. We all do. Outside of God's grace, we're all strugglers. We're going to struggle. But she mingled. And then what happened was just absolutely horrible. Not only was she sexually assaulted, then the same wicked, evil scum that did the thing said, "Oh, I love you. Now I want to marry you." What? And what's even worse is Jacob's silence is completely deafening. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, so let's go on. The types of defilement shown here can lead to unbiblical reactions. The defilement was horrible, but let's look at the first biblical reaction. In the text is in verse 4. Shechem spoke to his father, "Get me this woman to be a wife." Verse 5, and Jacob heard that he defiled Dinah, his daughter. And then, at the end of the verse, Jacob held his peace. He was silent. To me, this is the most shocking reaction. I have 2 daughters. If they're harmed in any way, let alone this way, I'm not going to be silent. Sure, if someone takes my daughter's crayons when they were little, I'm not going to make a big deal about it. If someone physically assaults them, I'm not going to have, hopefully by God's grace, not going to have the reaction that Dinah's brothers did, but I'm certainly not going to have the reaction of Jacob. We can't, and those of you fathers out there can understand that. Mothers, you can understand the same thing. This is, to me, is the most amazing thing. Jacob was completely silent. Later, he indicated the reason for his silence is that he was worried that it was going to cause problems from other tribes, and so he didn't want to speak up. And it's sad. This is the same man who just a couple chapters ago we see him stand up and show biblical courage. Now he's worried, seemingly, about his checkbook, because he was worried it was going to cause not only cause physical harm, but also cause harm to his financial wealth. Very sad. But Dinah's brothers also reacted wrongly. They reacted in a very angry manner. Now, their anger was not sinful. The Bible makes it very clear that we can be angry and not sin. And they were very, very angry, and they were grieved in verse 7. By the way, the word there that's used, it's the same word that God uses, or that Moses used earlier to describe how God was grieved that he had made mankind because of the sin right before the flood. Remember when we saw that? It's the same exact word. There's nothing wrong with their anger and their grief and their being upset. That should have happened, and that was a good response. But they needed to channel that anger in a way to honor and glorify God. But what was their reaction? Oops. I'll come back to the Canaanites in a minute. What did they do with the reaction? They used their anger to deceive and get retribution. The men of Shechem and his family said, "Look, we want to intermarry, we want to intermingle, we want to do this." And Joseph's brothers, Dinah's brothers, by the way, these would be the children of Leah, not Rachel. Also goes back to, if you remember, it seems to indicate that Jacob always had more affection towards Rachel and her kids. We're seeing that again here. But they said, no. In order to do this, you're going to have to become as us. You're going to have to go through the process of physical circumcision as adults. Again, not comfortable, but this is what they did. So the men did that. The men of the country did that. They didn't deal with so they're deceiving him, saying, yeah, we'll allow you to marry as long as you go through this. Well, they were being deceitful. That wasn't their intent. They didn't want to deal with the sin head on. No, instead, what they did is they were cruel, not only to Shechem, but to the entire community. Because what we didn't read in verses 20 and following, what happened is they came to the household of the men of the city, and while the men were still recovering from that procedure, which would have been horrible, what did they do? They killed them.